It was a momentous occasion 32 years ago that has continued to shape Nigeria's polity. The June 12, 1993 presidential election and its subsequent annulment remains a watershed in Nigeria's political landscape, with the past and current APC-led federal government taking steps to atone for the sins committed against the nation by top military leaders with alleged connivance by some politicians. Now, as part of the moves to honor past heroes in the June 12 struggle, President Bola Tinubu on Thursday conferred national honors on several outspoken leaders of that era. While some citizens commend the president for paying tribute to the heroes of June 12 struggle, including himself, others lament that some key names were conspicuously omitted from the list, allegedly for political reasons. Now, the president conferred honors on several recipients, foremost among which is General Shehu Musa Yar'Adua and Kudirat Abiola, wife of late Chief MKO Abiola, the winner of the June 12 election, considered one of the freest and fairest in Nigeria's political history, but which was annulled by the military government of General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida. Now, President Tinubu also conferred honors on the late chairman of the National Electoral Commission, then Professor Humphrey Nwosu, who finally got his flowers for his acclaimed role in conducting the historic June 12 election. Now, among the living, Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka got GCON, and he was celebrated for his enduring commitment to justice and democracy in the country, including Beko Ransom Kuti, Chima Obani, and others. Now, the gesture follows the earlier call by Chief Kola Abiola, the first son of the late MKO Abiola, on the federal government to formally honor persons who were murdered or jailed under the military regime of General Sani Abacha. But despite all of these actions, over the years, Kola Abiola says he's not sure Nigeria has learned any lessons from the tragic June 12 annulment. And joining us right here in the studio, I'm glad to have Chief Kola Abiola, who is the scion of the MKO Abiola dynasty, and he's the former presidential candidate of the People's Redemption Party. And of course, that was in the 2023 general election. And so good to have you here discuss with us. How have you been, by the way? I mean,
Alhamdulillah, I'm good.
You've been so quiet within the political scene.
I'm always a little low-key. So that's
I mean, you're supposed to be in the opposition, and does it mean you forfeited you forfeited your 2027 ambition already?
No.
Is that what it means? I mean,
you see, in the People's Redemption Party, we do things a little differently.
All right.
We don't have the candidate or the individual speak. We speak as a party. So all issues raised, all our concerns, all come from communiques directly from the party.
All right.
And that's how we run the People's Redemption Party. It's not about one person. It's about the party as a whole. So what we do, if we have an issue or a specific item, we do a write-up on it and we release that to the press.
All right.
And that's how we've done it.
Some sort of progressivism there. I mean, I hope it's not because President Tinubu was a very good friend of your father and maybe you don't want to challenge him. I mean,
nothing to do with that. We take a party view, we take a public view, we take a people view. That's why we're called the People's Redemption Party. We take the poor man's view and try to speak on his behalf to power. And the best way to do it is not to have an individual speak, because if I speak individually, it comes across as if I have a personal grudge or anything. But as a party and as a body, we speak as one.
All right, and now let's just get straight into the matter. I mean, you have been calling for more honors to be given to those who struggled alongside your family. I mean, your father was the leader of that era, and you've been agitating for these honors. Do you feel fulfilled by any chance with President Tinubu's attempt to actually listen to voices like you and, you know, honor more people apart from Chief MKO Abiola himself? Well,
I think, yeah, thank you. I think he's done well by taking the first step, by recognizing some specific names as to what criteria or what justification for some. I'm sure they know best. But I think I suggested four things in that write-up. One was a recognition. One was a national monument to June 12th.
Yeah.
One was a register for so many names that you and I don't even know.
Yeah, I mean, a whole lot of people, not just the prominent faces alone.
Exactly, not just the prominent faces alone. And then the fourth is to have our educational system and our history recognize the importance and of June 12th in the politics and in Nigeria as a whole. So these are the 4 things. So they've done the first one. The criteria used, I'm sure they have their reasons for using those criteria, but it's a start. Talking about that, you mentioned Humphrey Nwosu, for example.
Yeah, I mean, after all the controversies,
yeah,
whether he should be honored or not,
yeah,
especially by federal lawmakers.
But I don't even have a problem with that. I think he deserves to be honored, to be honest with you. As somebody I met, I spoke to, I interviewed, and I think he did his very best to uphold his job description, is that how you call it? His job. And I think even if you're going to nominate him for national honor, you must also remember someone like, I think it's the NEC legals.
Yeah, who
director.
Went to courts.
Yeah,
I mean, I think
Bakari
Buhari.
Yeah.
Bello Buhari.
Yeah. So someone like that definitely should. That's why I said I'm not sure of the criteria they use or their understanding of events, but someone like that cannot be left out, for example. So, and so many other names in there but it's done, it's done.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to Professor Tony Redia during the week at the democracy lecture here in Abuja. He mentioned how Bello Buhari had to
I mean, these are people that if you are truly a participant in that, you must know their role. You must appreciate their role. And there's so many names like that are not on that list. At least the first 11, so to speak. You would on that day we should expect that the first 11, so to speak, the key immediate ones. But that said, it's a start. He also said, Mr. President also mentioned that it's not an exhaustive list of that day. Other names will come, so we'll see what comes.
Yeah, and I remember he was actually out of the country on exile when some of these things were happening. But of course, that's the more reason why we should have institutional history, because we also have some names being repetitive in terms of being given national honors.
Yeah, some names is like so that already they even have national honors already. But like I said, there must be a process. It's like the pardons, for example. You must go through a process where they get pardoned and then they're given the national honors. It shouldn't be the other. But the detail is the detail, but the fact is that at least the process has started. So.
And have you been reading the media? I mean, to actually find out how some people, like Dele Momodu, are saying that, I mean, people are actually raising observations that names like his and others were not included. And maybe, I mean, some people are reading political meanings. I mean, so if you're one of the June 12 activists and you have a grudge with the current APC-led federal government that's being, headed by President Tinubu, you'll be left out. Maybe another president who knows you may give you yours in the future. I mean,
I think that goes back to what I mentioned about, or what I said about the first 11. There are some names that should have at least been on that list, irrespective of your political affiliation. Someone like me, for example, I was deeply involved in the post and the pre and the post election. My house was raided by security forces looking for me. But for my late daughter, I don't know where I would have been today. I was in detention for 5 months. But it's not about me.
But your father's shadow, overshadows everything.
People
will be interested to actually hear your own personal experience as to what exactly happened, because not so much has been heard on your own personal experience during that period. The assumption is that, you're just within the shadow of your dad.
No, in the last, 32 years since June 12th, in the last 26 years of the democratic rule in Nigeria, there isn't an active player in governance from that period that I didn't work directly with I was pretty young back then. Directly, including Mr. President.
Yeah, they were always visiting your dad in his hotel. Your hotel room. I remember you said that.
I'm not a stranger to all of them.
Get to see them.
I'm not a stranger to all of them. I know them very well, intimately know them very well, and they know me very well. So, loyalty first is to dad. My responsibility was to deliver that ticket, first and foremost, and that's what for me, that's enough gratitude. I delivered the ticket. I did what I should do. Whatever happened subsequently, well. But as far as delivering the ticket and making sure MKO won that election, I did what it took to achieve that. And for that, that's all the merit I can ask for. I don't need a national honor to supposedly get that. He knows, God bless his soul, what I did and what roles what role I played, and the decision-making process in which I had to go, the strategy, the planning, the execution, everything. I mean, he left it to me. I couldn't have asked for a better responsibility at that age. So they all know who I am, so I don't need to go and...
Of course, quite all right.
They know what role I played.
Yeah,
and that's one thing I must give Raji Lamido some credit here, because he's been consistent.
Yeah, I mean, he was the national secretary of the Social Democratic Party then. I mean, we're going to come to that.
There's not a single time he talks about June 12th and doesn't mention my name in there. There isn't a single time he speaks about June 12th and doesn't mention, you should go and ask Kola.
Yeah.
Because I was at the table.
Yeah.
I wasn't
always there
sitting behind. I was at the table. So you see, that's why for me,
especially that particular time when Atiku Abubakar had to be asked to step down. I mean, every time I keep thinking of that period, how you could also help put in a word as for
I think
to step down for your dad at that just convention.
Like I said,
and how Yaradua had to also to just go and step down.
Like I said, I got the late general, may Allah bless his soul, to come in from Kaduna that morning. He had a massive crash with his car. He had to take a taxi to get to Jos at Ambassador Yakamde's house. We met. We spoke. He agreed with me. He called in. It's not more Choraki now. I think it's Choraki. He has another title now.
The Waziri.
The Waziri. Yeah. He called in Waziri Adamawa. We spoke. He agreed, and we moved. And not just that. That's just the first of two. The issue when it came to picking a running mate also.
Yes.
I had to be the one to go there, sit with them, talk to them, and eventually we ended up picking Baba Kingibe. I had to fly to Jos to meet Baba Ambassador Kingibe. So it's you see, we all seem to tend to want to have different ideas and different histories, or rewrite a bit of that period. I will set that record straight very soon.
All right.
Okay. And why I'm not moving that much, because we have a documentary coming up first. I don't want to preempt that.
Yeah.
So once that comes in, then my own part of it will come. Like I said, I was at the table throughout this. Nobody can claim not to know the role I played. And maybe that role is probably haunting me today is another thing entirely, because they tend to understand that I mean, what I'm capable of doing when I was back then, 29, I think. But
all right. I mean, you've thrown up a whole lot of issues. But let's talk about how President Tinubu has gone ahead to honor late General Shehu Musa Yar'Adua with the nation's highest honor of GCFR. I mean, how comforting is that? I mean,
General was more of a godfather to me. A lot of what I learned politically, I learned through him. You know, MK was in politics, but he wasn't a politician.
Yeah.
And I think very much that very much applies to me also. But General was actually a politician, and I spent an incredible amount of time with him. And a lot of what I learned and how I was able to infiltrate and get to understand who was important, how things were done, came through General. So I have enormous respect for him. They started this process. If you recall, when the parties were proscribed, they were all locked up, including General. Yeah. So yes, I think he definitely deserves this. Maybe if that process had continued, I'm pretty sure he would have won that election anyway. Yeah. So yeah, I think he played a very important role. he played a role that, how do I say this without saying it at the same time, but he was able to checkmate quite a bit. I think I'd leave it at that for now.
Okay, and then of course the posthumous national honors on Kola Abiola and all of that. Your family is in the spotlight again. I mean, being honored after Chief Abiola in 2018. How does that?
I think that's for me. It just further helps bring closure to those events. And if you remember President Buhari's speech, he specifically mentioned the need to still honor those Kudirat and a few other people. So it's just a fulfillment, it's a continuation. Like I said, government is never in a vacuum. So whatever I do, what set of government does, is either carried over or is corrected or not touched at all. And I came out and wrote that piece after the first year passed, and I felt, don't let's forget to do these things. It wasn't really out of trying to second guess whether it would be done or not, but it was just out of the fact that I had a concern that this thing was larger than just us. So let us just see it through and conclude it. It wasn't meant to be anything but that, and I'm glad the step has started.
And some people said that this has not brought closure to the issues that have been raised with Kola Abiola's death. No one knows if there is a particular investigative report that revealed how she was killed, because there are still claims that it was the state. She was a victim of state killing. I mean, has there been any formal closure in terms of investigations, or your family has just left it
no.
that way?
It's like I said, it's the first step. One thing I'd hoped we would have seen Thursday was not just and that's why, because the nominees are so extensive, it kind of derailed from the whole issue of the democracy day to some extent, because one of the big issues is not so much the nominee, but the justice bit of it was missing. And I'm sure they will get to that justice bit, because it's not complete without the justice behind. No justice was, or the means of getting to justice was marked out in that speech. And it's a very, very vital thing, because as a country, we need to come to terms with what happened then to allow us to go forward. And it's something that I'm sure they will have to address over time.
And I'm asking this because some people, I mean, from the Niger Delta, are also saying that, yes, it's good that Kensaruriwa and Yogoninai, I mean, yeah, they were given national honors and all of that, but that they need to be exonerated from what had happened and all of that. So, yes, I mean, they welcome all of the honors, but, I mean, the justice part of it is the point I'm making. Exonerated of,
the justice bit of it, the justice bit has to be. Go hand in hand. Unfortunately, it hasn't done that yet, but it'll get there, I'm sure now. But you can't do it. You can't do one without the other. It's it's not mutually exclusive.
And let's talk about General Ibrahim Babangida.
Right.
I mean, he actually wrote a book of recent, and he's building the presidential library. And then, of course, a lot of people were expecting you to immediately issue a statement the following day after, I mean, all the who's who in Nigeria gathered in Abuja to honor him. But you didn't, but it took some time. It looks like maybe you were reflecting. And eventually, when you did, you mentioned one thing that looks like Nigeria hasn't learned a lesson from the June 12th struggle, and that it didn't look like you were so comfortable by some of the things that IBB had said, especially saying that Abacha had a critical role to play in the annulment of June 12th. So sort of exonerating himself from the process, despite that he was a key player.
Well, for me, I think it would have been totally irresponsible for me to just jump at the following day and say something. I don't work on emotions. I tend to be a very logical person, which has its own drawbacks also. And at some point, if you recall, I had an interim statement, followed eventually with a proper substantive. And I think because of history, because everything you do or say nowadays is over the net, you must do your homework, properly analyze things before you speak. Yes, I read the book. Yes, I think the bit about June 12th is totally incomplete. And that's why I said what I said in that write-up. You cannot have a program drawn out over a 6-year period that cost individuals, and also cost the country in excess of $5 billion, and not come straight and clean with the facts. You cannot have a scenario where you are just mentioning one man that's passed away. You mention an unknown Lieutenant General, right? When we know there's a Brigadier General alive and a few people alive. But why did you single out that particular one?
You said it clearly, and I want to read your words. You say, after 32 years out of office, one wonders why IBB believes that the living culprits should still remain nameless.
Well, first, if you had mentioned other people involved, the Brigadier General, for example, and a few, trust me, I would have given you the names myself. But I deliberately didn't do that because I didn't want to get into their military politics or issues. That's for them to either take to their graves or come clean with it. That's number one. Number two, it's either there is still a fear after 32 years, or at 85 or 86, you're still afraid that, like he said in the book, that there was a threat to his life and my father's life. Maybe that threat is still there at this age. I don't know. But if at this age, 32 years later, we're closer to our God every single second. So I don't think or maybe there's a posthumous book coming. I don't know. But I can't understand why not now. And if just for MKO alone, who paid the ultimate price for this, and this still didn't get his presidency, I think after 32 years, we should all come clean with these things. And I felt that book launch was one opportunity to at least do that. Even if you didn't say it directly in the book, in the speech, you should have at least come clean. I'm not going to go to General Abacha and ask him. I can't anyway.
Well,
so,
he's already gone.
Yeah.
But I mean, one of your brothers has gone ahead to say that IBB called your family to apologize personally. I mean, were you part of that apology? I mean, Kola Abiola.
Maybe to him, but I didn't get a part of it. Besides, it's the family him. I mean, President Buhari went public and gave an apology to the family, to the voters, and to the country. That's how it's done. Not privately. It's done. So I don't know where Leko got his own.
So
from.
Are you saying that you were not witness to such
I wasn't even aware that that apology was done. Maybe to him.
Well,
but like I said,
because this was made known at a family event. I mean, just a few days ago.
It's a big family. What can I tell you?
Yeah, I mean.
So, but I'm telling you that this is not a personal thing. It's a national thing. And besides, if President Buhari had given, as Commander-in-Chief and President, on behalf of the Federal Republic, given an apology to the family, to Nigerians as a whole, then I think that supersedes any private thing.
Well,
that's my view.
Interesting conversation. Yeah. But let's talk about how close you were to IBB yourself at some point. And I mean, you dated even his daughter at some point.
What does that have to do with
Well, I thought that there was some sort of direct line of communication between you and IBB.
I've always had a direct line.
So hasn't he called you?
I've always had a direct line with him.
In the memory of your dad, I just want to call and apologize personally.
No.
Or this is what really happened.
No.
Haven't you had that personal conversation?
No.
And why would that be? I mean, despite your closeness, I mean, to the family.
Look, one thing he did, and I give him credit for, when we were doing the documentary, he granted us an interview for that, in which he, like he's always said, and he did in February, took full responsibility for the events. That he did, but to personally, no. So, yeah, I have, like any one of them, him in particular, I have a lot of respect for him. I have no No, but the facts are the facts. You can't. At the end of the day, I'm MKO's son.
Have you forgiven IBB and maybe General Abacha?
I don't even hold a great grudge against any one of them.
I mean, a whole lot of
Honestly,
Nigerians will think you would definitely do. I mean,
no, I don't, because you see, the events. I'm a Muslim, and I'm sure that applies to you as a Christian also. Everything is in the hands of God. I'm supposed to learn from events. I'm supposed to take my cue from events. I went through this at a very tender age, very young age. And I went through it there must be some good reason why I did. So let me take the positives out of that and move on and respect them. The day MKO got the GCFR, the day we got an apology, the day we got apology to Nigerians as a whole. For me, that was what? Since Omar Yar'Adua, I've been working on that. I've been trying since Omar Yar'Adua to get that GCFR. I personally championed it with him. Unfortunately, he didn't live long enough. If he did, he would have gotten it. I tried with Jonathan. I tried so hard with Jonathan, he couldn't get the nerves to do it. After he lost the election, I went back to him and said, look, make this your legacy. Mm-hmm. He still didn't do it. And just speaking to President Buhari once, and then making sure I did the right things to get it to him, we get it. Like they say, whether the snake is dead, as long as the snake is dead, whether it's the woman or woman that killed the snake, as long as the snake is dead. It doesn't matter
as long as it's dead.
Yeah. So
all right, and I just want you to roll back to the earlier statement you said about General IBB refusing to mention these names of these individuals who are still alive.
Right.
And you mentioned one thing, that it's all about self-preservation that's common with
it still sounds like
Nigerian politicians, especially of these days. Why did you come to such a conclusion?
Because if you're president for 8.5 years, a man won an election, I bet you probably would have died the day he died anyway. He would have passed away the day he passed away. But why not have him earn why let him do it for the reasons why he's going to be passed away. He was not incarcerated. He was not locked up. He wasn't a criminal. He didn't steal government money. He wasn't into corruption. He wasn't locked up for being a drug baron or anything like that. No, he won an election, for God's sake, and you put him in detention for that long, and ended up dying in detention for that long. He ended up dying in detention eventually for something that he stood by. If he had the guts to stand by it, a battle-tested general, somebody who has steered the ship of country, survived a coup, bloody one for that matter, I rest my case.
All right, just before we go on a short break, Kola Abiola,
yes,
I want to ask you, did you feel betrayed by the number of Nigerians who turned out at the IBB book launch? Having seen all the events that happened, how the Nigerian state almost got out of existence because of the June 12 debacle, and the massive number of elites in the country that poured into the IBB book launch. Do you think if Abiola was alive, such would have happened, or it's just the normal way Nigerian elites like to behave? I mean,
you know, they say something, huh? And I said it earlier on. We shake the foundation of Nigeria, right? We went from the perfect election in 1993, ethnically, religiously, otherwise. Regionally, everybody voted for one person. And because you needed to, because of either you didn't want to leave office, or for a particular set of individuals who didn't want to hand over power, or for some so-called elites, and political elites also, you decide to annul that election, only just to stop one man, MKO. So why are you so surprised about the turnout? Why are you so surprised about the turnout? You shouldn't be, because many of them, I'm sure, were part of the decision to annul. for sure. I know a few of them that are there. I know.
Yeah, I mean, that's always been the thinking that they have to follow Abacha into the government. But their thinking also is that your father actually said Abacha should be supported so that he will run a shorter transition and possibly hand over power to him.
He didn't say that.
And that's why, this is what some of the June 12 activists say themselves. And that's why they had to get into Abacha's government, including the likes of Lateef Jakonde and all of that.
He never said that. They had a meeting in the house. I was in that meeting, and then after the meeting, I sat with my father. I said, "Look, sir, I was in Kaduna 2 days ago. From my discussion with the late General Shehu Yaradua, right? This guy's he refused to participate in the Abacha government because he didn't give an exit date. So as far as they are concerned, they're not going to participate. But this set of people who are going to be in there. Because when I got in that day, the meeting was on. After we met in his bedroom, I said, sir, these people are just going to use us to appear as if we rubber stamped the decision to go. They were gone already. They were gone already. That's number one. Number two, he just, being the practical man he is, or he was, you know what, let them do. For as long as they're hanging around me, it's going to continue to cost me something. So let them go do what they have to do, because they're going to do it anyway. And that was his view. So no, he didn't say they should go. That's number one. Number two, on the Abacha side, on the question you asked about whether he supported Abacha. No.
Yes.
The mistake made was thinking that nobody plans a coup. Nobody plans a coup to do the right thing. You take a huge, as well as military, you take a huge risk to plan a coup. So you must be doing it for yourself. The mistake he made was to think that he will plan that coup and do the right thing. That was the thing. Not that he supported it.
All right.
So there's a big difference.
All right, we'll go on a short break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about whether Nigerians have actually learned the lessons of June 12 or not, and of course the call by former National Secretary of the Social Democratic Party, then party that won the June 12 election, and former Jigawa State Governor Sule Lamido, for the federal government to actually pay 45 billion naira to the family of late Chief Kola Abiola. Stay with us as we go on a short break. Welcome back from the break. You're still watching This Week, and I'm Somna Sambu. Next, and still centered around June 12, is the family of late Chief Moshood Abiola, which is demanding details of the reported 45 billion naira debt owed its patriarch by the federal government. Now, the call follows a recent statement by former Jigawa State Governor Sule Lamido, who appealed to President Bola Tinubu to compensate the family as a gesture of national healing and justice. Lamido had revived the dispute over the money allegedly owed to late Abiola, insisting that the federal government pay the heirs of the late business mogul. Now, the money is believed to be part of unpaid contract fees, which he claimed was acknowledged by military leaders after the death of former military head of state, General Murtala Mohammed, in the 70s. Now, Lamido, who was the former national secretary of Abiola's party, the defunct Social Democratic Party, says the money was for contracts executed by Abiola's company, the International Telephone and Telecommunication, ITT, for then Ministry of Communications. And Sule Lamido claims the military said they cancelled the June 12 elections because if they had made Abiola president, he would have taken this huge quantum of money as at then, and the country would become bankrupt. And that those who were close to Abacha know much about the controversy. Now, still with us in the studio is Chief Kola Abiola, scion of the Moshood Abiola dynasty and former presidential candidate of the People's Redemption Party, PRP. Thank you so much, Chief Abiola, for still being here with us. Now, how do you react to that statement? I mean, it was the one that hit me most is that the military leaders were thinking that if your dad had been allowed to become president, that he would just pay himself the 45 billion naira, which was huge money as at then, and of course Nigeria would just go bankrupt.
Well, first, you keep calling me chief. I'm not chief.
Well, I mean, taking over your dad.
That's number one. Look, these monies started way back from head of state Obasanjo, not President Obasanjo, head of state Obasanjo.
Yeah.
And they did well, for some, whatever reason, he wasn't paid that money because they didn't want to empower him because he was probably a threat. But guess what? He still ran for the election and he won it. Once again, like I said with Alhaji Lamido, he obviously understands and knows his onions. He said it all for me already. The question now is, and like he rightfully pointed out in the speech that annulled the election, that's one of the things then President, Mr. President Babangida mentioned in that speech. The question now is whether it will be paid now, tomorrow, or day after. And we supposedly have in present governance that understands or is close to him. So if anything is going to be done at all, it'll have to start from here.
Yeah, but do you have the details of
we have the
this
details.
contract?
We have
because
the
some people are also
sure.
saying that your father never fully executed the contracts.
Please,
and then, of course, there was the ITT controversy. Fela had to sing about it.
Please.
That the contract was not properly executed.
Please. He had a chunky project to digitalize the Nigerian telecommunication systems. A lot of the backbone of NITEL then was provided by ITT. Now, what they were going to digitalize that whole backbone. It was a chunky contract initially, and then somebody decided to be smart and decided to pieces the contract. A, to provide the switching buildings. B, I think it was Fujikura, a Japanese company, was supposed to provide the trunking while we provide the equipment. And that, knowing him, fulfilled his own bid. We bought and imported the whole equipment in full. And we were paying warehouse cost, waiting for the buildings to be in place and waiting for the Japanese company to come and do the trunking. Now, because A was not speaking to B, B was not speaking to C, the buildings were built wrong. The inlets, the outlets were wrong. So it had to be redone. By the time the Japanese companies came, the wiring and everything, this is a US, digital switches. They didn't understand that. They didn't do it. They didn't understand that. So implementing those things became a problem. So those things were even sitting in warehouses for years. So you can't tell me we didn't execute our own bit of the contract. He will always tell you, Kola, look, no matter what you do it by the letter. Because when trouble comes, you can show them that, yes, I did it by the letter. And if there's going to be a solution, because you did it by the letter, you will be part of that solution, like it or not, because you have done it the right way. Don't say because my friend is the minister, you just do things. Do it the way it ought to be done.
Yeah, because governments
exactly.
come and governments go. Now, have you approached the Tinubu administration? Do you have all the full details to use to claim this money? And do you think that there's been an unwillingness by previous administrations to pay, or you've just forgiven this debt?
No, you can't forgive a debt that's owned by a man that worked for it. No, you can't do that. That's not the case. The case is how do you approach it, and in what ways do you approach it? They either, like I said, the reasons in which they refuse to pay him still exist till today,
even within a democratic setting.
In my own view.
With some progressives and June 12 activists in power,
because
at the aim of the federal government?
Yeah, but whatever those reasons are, like I said, for once, I think we have people who understand, who are close to him, who will address the issue, right? I mean, with all due respect and kudos to Mr. President, is somebody I know very well. We worked closely from JOS Convention throughout the whole election. We worked even post-election despite their knowledge. So he knows me very, very well. I know him very, very well. So bringing it on and discussing it should not be a barrier for.
Yeah, I mean, some people say he's one of the greatest beneficiaries of the June 12 struggle.
So
because he got what your dad ought to, have got. I mean, so
well,
shouldn't you think that should spur him to actually, lay this to rest? Very
the biggest benefactor from that is General Obasanjo.
I mean, within the democratic setup.
Without that, he would not be president twice again, despite whatever he wants to think. So, yeah, he didn't. I mean, Mr. President today is not. It all started with. I mean, the benefactor started with General Obasanjo for sure. So,
all right,
this time I believe it'll be different.
Okay, well, let's just hope President Tinubu will do the right thing, and I mean, the federal government put in place the right processes for you all to have this money, because Sule Lamido believes it's double jeopardy for him to have lost the won the election, and he wasn't given. Of course, he had this monies.
And not being president again.
And of course, well, as we try to wrap up this conversation, Kola Abiola, let's talk about how you came to that conclusion that Nigerians haven't learned so much from the June 12 struggle.
I am really. Look, how do you go from what is actually the best election in Nigeria, which is the 1993 election? Even the president, if there's one thing he did right, is to make sure we conducted a very good election. President Babangida.
Babangida.
We conducted the best election, violence-free. People were dancing in the streets to what we have today, where we're divided ethnically, religiously, neighbors are fighting each other, total insecurity around elections and campaigns because everybody has been sidelined. So everybody's taking the law into their hands. We couldn't have possibly learned anything if we are in where we are today. That's number one. Number two, 65% of our population don't even remember what happened back then. Even us, NKO kids, 65% of us were 10 years and below then.
Yeah.
Let alone today to understand the implications of that election. So if you look at all that, and the ones that have come subsequently in that 26 years, haven't showed a pretty good example of democracy.
All right.
The way we played it back in 1993. Okay. So that gives me a lot of concern. We need to get people to understand and own this thing so we prevent it from happening. The foundations that subsequently came has rocked the whole process negatively.
All right, Kola Abiola, I won't allow you to go without asking this question. There are some people who are questioning the validity of June 12 itself, saying that June 12 wasn't totally free the way the Lagos-Ibadan, press made it look like Nigeria-wise. Because, I mean, the two parties that contested in June 12 were brought in place by the military, SDP and NRC, not by the will of the Nigerian people. The national chairmen of the political parties were imposed on them. The party offices were built by the military and all of that. That it was just like a hush-hush arrangement to just, get some people into power. I mean, how democratic was the June 12 election itself?
And I'll go back to, in response, I'll go back to late General Shehu Yaradua. When the interim discussion came, and I sat with him. I said, sir, what do we do next? He said, look, whatever we do, let's make sure they go.
The military goes.
Go. So if he's looking for an interim, let us make sure at least he goes and then we can continue. So when the whole two-party thing came and we were involved in it, go and ask every Nigerian out there who voted whether that system was not right or not, or whether he didn't deliver what he should deliver, or whether we didn't win that election or not. You will get your answers. But more importantly, it was about a 6-year program that required us to do what it needed to get the military back into the barracks. And if that's how they wanted, because, with the military, they are the judge, jury, everything. So if that's how they want to play it, to get them away, let's go ahead and play it. They rule by a fiat and decree. So if that's how they wanted to do it, fine. But let us get them out of the room. And it doesn't come any more credible or valid than that.
Well, such a fine place to actually leave the conversation. Thank you so much. Kola Abiola is the scion of the Moshood Abiola dynasty and of course a former presidential candidate of the People's Redemption Party. We must thank you so much for all that your family has done for Nigeria, and of course we continue to appreciate all the sacrifices, knowing that your dad's life was cut short, and of course other family members because of this. But of course the nation is atoning for its sins, and I just hope you found a way to forgive Nigeria and its leaders.
I will take the opportunity to also thank Nigerians for the support they gave the family. I want to thank Nigerians for standing by us throughout these years. And also for being at one with the family, because they say whatever affects the nose will affect the face.
Yeah.
So,
Most thank you so much, because I mean, whenever people see you, I mean, they just take a look and say, look, this is exactly how MK Abiola used to look like.
Thank you.
So
was very loyal,
for those of us who didn't grow up to actually get to know Abiola, I mean, the younger generation, this is exactly how did that almost look like. Well, we must thank you so much for immense wealth of knowledge. And of course, that's how the show has been from my colleagues in London, here in Abuja and Lagos. We must thank you so much for joining us. And it's on this note that we end this edition of This Week. I'm Somna Sambo. Stay with us.